T-Rex is the most famous predator in history. Enormous, powerful, a bite force stronger than any land animal ever measured. It dominated everything around it for roughly 2 million years before it disappeared. 2 million years sounds like a long time. The terror birds of South America ruled their continent for 50 million years. They were not dinosaurs, they were birds, 10 feet tall, 30 miles per hour on open ground, and a beak that killed in a way no other large predator in history ever used. A single downward strike directly onto the skull of their prey. Precise, fast, and in 50 million years, not one animal they hunted ever developed a reliable way to stop it. This is the full story of the terror birds, and why their record will probably never be broken. Part 1. How the terror birds got their continent. To understand why terror birds became what they became, you need to understand the world they were born into. 66 million years ago, an asteroid hit the Earth and ended the age of the dinosaurs. Almost every large animal on the planet was wiped out. The survivors were small. Mammals were the size of rats. Birds were the size of pigeons. The world was empty of large predators for the first time in hundreds of millions of years. In most parts of the world, mammals moved quickly into that empty space. They grew larger. They became predators. Within a few million years, large mammal predators were filling the roles that dinosaurs had left behind across Europe, Asia, Africa, and North America. But South America was different. At that time, South America was not connected to North America. It was an island continent, completely isolated, separated from the rest of the world by ocean on every side. The mammals that survived the asteroid in South America were mostly herbivores, plant eaters, large, slow animals with no serious predators chasing them. Into that vacuum stepped the birds. One specific group of flightless birds began growing, fast. Within a few million years of the dinosaurs disappearing, a new lineage of large predatory birds was already establishing itself across South America. Scientists call them phorusrhacids. Everyone else calls them terror birds. And for the next 50 million years, they owned every piece of open ground on the continent. Part 2. What they actually looked like. Close your eyes for a second and picture a bird. Whatever you are imagining, make it 10 feet tall. Now give it legs like a cassowary, thick and powerful, and built for explosive acceleration. Give it a neck that is almost as long as its legs, and at the end of that neck, put a skull the size of a human head, hooked at the tip like a pickaxe, with a beak that curves downward into a point sharp enough to penetrate bone. That is a terror bird. The largest species, Brontornis, stood over 9 feet tall and weighed close to 1,000 pounds. The fastest species, Mesembryonis, had leg proportions that scientists estimate allowed it to reach speeds of around 30 miles per hour on open ground. The most common species, Phorusrhacos itself, was around 5 feet tall at the hip and combined speed with a skull large enough to deliver a strike with serious force. None of them could fly. Their wings had been reduced over millions of years to small, useless stubs. They did not need wings. They had the entire continent to themselves. There was nothing above them that threatened them, and nothing beside them that could compete with them. Flight is expensive. It requires enormous energy to maintain the muscle mass needed to get a large body airborne. When you have no predators and no competition, that energy is better spent elsewhere. The terror birds spent it on legs and skull. The result was an animal perfectly engineered for the environment it lived in. Open grassland, isolated continent, slow, heavily built prey that had never developed serious escape behaviors because nothing had ever seriously chased them. Part 3. The killing blow. Here is the part that separates terror birds from every other large predator in history. Most large predators kill the same basic way. They close the distance to their prey, they bite and hold. They use sustained grip pressure to suffocate or bleed out the animal. Lions do this, leopards do this, wolves do this. Even T-Rex, for all its size, was fundamentally a bite and hold predator. The jaw closes, the prey cannot escape, death follows. Terror birds did something completely different. Biomechanical research published in 2010 by a team led by scientist Federico de Grange analyzed the skull structure of terror birds in detail. What they found changed the understanding of how these animals hunted. The terror bird's skull was not built for sustained biting pressure. The beak was large and hooked, but the jaw muscles were not arranged to hold prey against resistance. If a large, struggling animal pulled against a terror bird's grip, the beak would not have been strong enough to maintain it. So, they did not grip, they struck. The terror bird's killing method was a rapid, downward hatchet blow with the hooked upper beak, like an axe coming down. The neck muscles that powered this strike were enormous, far larger than needed for normal feeding. The hook at the tip of the beak was sharp and dense enough to penetrate the skull of a medium-sized mammal in a single blow. The strike targeted the top of the skull or the back of the neck. The goal was not to hold. The goal was to end the fight before it started. This method had advantages that no other killing technique in the prehistoric world matched. It was fast. A single strike taking a fraction of a second. No extended struggle. No risk of injury from a prolonged fight. No energy wasted on a chase that ended in a wrestling match. It was precise. The terror bird did not need to overpower its prey physically. It needed to land one accurate strike on a specific target. Accuracy replaced strength as the primary requirement. And it was almost impossible to defend against. Prey animals evolve defenses against the threats they face repeatedly. Thick hide develops against claws. Horns develop against biting predators. Speed develops against pursuit hunters. But a single downward strike from above onto the skull is not something a grazing mammal has a natural counter for. You cannot grow armor on the top of your head fast enough to keep pace with a predator refining its aim over 50 million years. In 50 million years of hunting on an isolated continent, not one prey animal in South America developed a reliable defense against the hatchet strike. The terror birds kept winning, and winning, and winning. Part 4. A hunt simulation. It is early morning on the South American grassland, 12 million years ago. The sun is low and the grass is still cold. A macrauchenia is feeding at the edge of a tree line. It looks a little like a camel with a short trunk. It weighs around 2,000 pounds. By the standards of this continent, it is a large animal. It has survived here because it is fast over distance and because the open grass gives it clear sight lines in every direction. What it cannot see is directly behind the tree line. A terror bird has been standing still for 11 minutes. It does not pace, it does not call. It reads the wind and it waits. When the macrauchenia moves to within 40 meters of the tree line, the terror bird steps out. Not running yet, walking, fast and direct. The macrauchenia sees it immediately and breaks into a run away from the trees. The terror bird accelerates. Its stride is long and efficient. It is not the fastest animal on this grassland, but it does not need to be. It needs to close 30 meters before the macrauchenia reaches full speed. It closes 25. The terror bird's neck pulls back. The hooked beak rises. The macrauchenia is beginning to accelerate, but it has not reached full pace. The terror bird is alongside it for one stride, 2 strides, and then the neck snaps forward. The beak comes down. The strike lands at the base of the skull where the neck meets the head. The macrauchenia's legs go wrong immediately. It stumbles. It does not fall yet, but its coordination is broken. The terror bird strikes again. Same target, same motion. The animal goes down. The entire sequence from the first strike to the prey on the ground takes less than 8 seconds. No other predator on the continent would have done it faster. Most would not have attempted it at all. Part 5. Why the record ended. For 50 million years, nothing challenged the terror birds. They diversified into different sizes and different hunting styles across South America. Large, slow species for large, slow prey. Small, fast species for small, fast prey. The continent shaped them, and they shaped the continent in return. Then, around 3 million years ago, the land bridge connecting North America and South America finished forming. The Isthmus of Panama, a narrow strip of land that for the first time allowed animals to move between the two continents freely. From the north came jaguars, pumas, giant ground sloths, gomphotheres, and most significantly, mammal predators that had spent millions of years competing with each other on a continent full of serious threats. North American predators were not slow herbivores that had never been seriously chased. They were fast, aggressive, experienced hunters who had been fighting for survival against other serious predators for as long as the terror birds had been dominating South America. For a while, the terror birds held. Some species survived the arrival of North American predators for hundreds of thousands of years. The evidence suggests they competed, not collapsed. But competing is not the same as dominating, and the terror birds had only ever known domination. The last terror birds disappeared from the fossil record around 2.5 million years ago. Some evidence suggests isolated populations may have survived in parts of South America until as recently as 10,000 years ago. The timeline is not perfectly clean. What is clean is the record. 50 million years of unbroken continental dominance. No other large predator in the history of land animals has held a continent for that long. T-Rex lasted 2 million years. The great cats of Africa have existed for around 3 million. The terror birds outlasted them all by a margin that makes every other predator's run look brief. They did not end because something was better. They ended because for the first time in 50 million years, the world they had been built for was no longer fully theirs. A bridge changed everything. One strip of land, and the most successful predators in the history of the planet ran out of continent. If the story of animals that dominated everything around them is what keeps you watching, our last video is exactly that. Watch baboons tear a spotted hyena to shreds next. No size advantage, no 50 million year head start. Just raw coordination against one of Africa's most powerful predators. It was over in 4 minutes, and the hyena never found a way out.